Hello, I'm Askat Sherlief and you're watching news from Kazakhstan. Yet another special operation was held in Atyrau region with liquidation of suspected terrorists. On Wednesday in Kulsari, the special forces have killed 5 people. According to the witnesses, in one of the districts of the city, local residents were evacuated early in the morning. The school and the kindergarten were closed. 3 houses were surrounded by the police and special forces. More details emerged in the evening of the same day. The General Prosecutor's Office published a press release where it confirmed the link between the explosion of makeshift bomb on September 5th in Atyrau and today's special operation. More details in the next report. For people living in Kulsari, which is located 300 kilometers from Atyrau, this morning started with the alarm sounds. First, they were informed that there was a gas leakage and the police requested them to evacuate their houses. Later, it appeared that the special operation on the arrest of suspected terrorists was ongoing in the area. The situation in this town is very criminal. Teenagers are fighting neighborhood against neighborhood. People are afraid of going out on the streets. We don't understand why the authorities are allowing all this. Where is the governor? Why doesn't he explain to us what is happening? My son has been detained this morning. He's 18 years old and they kept him from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. He said they interrogated him, but he doesn't have anything to do with the Wahhabis. How can they do this? Law enforcers surrounded one of the houses where the suspects hid. The neighborhood school and the kindergarten were also circled. As a result of the special operation, 5 people were killed and 1 wounded. The eyewitnesses tell of an explosion in the house number 22. The traces of blood are visible on its walls. People think that the criminals occupied the local boiler house and perhaps were planning to take over the whole neighborhood and the school. I was near the school when the kids were being evacuated and there was shooting everywhere. People only learned of what has been happening in Atyrau region from anonymous sources reporting in various media. In the afternoon, the Prosecutor General's office distributed the press release according to which the investigation on the events of September 5, 2012 led to Kulsari. 21-year-old person from Atyrau, Nurbek Sakaov, was nurturing the idea of violent actions against the law enforcement officials, according to the press release. On September 5, 2012, he blew himself accidentally. 3 improvised explosive devices were found on the site of the explosion. Later, 4 of his accomplices were detained, and today there was an attempt to arrest other group members. Before any action was taken by the special forces, the surrounded individuals detonated several explosive devices and opened return fire, injuring one of the fighters. Following the ensuing special operation, 5 bodies were recovered at the scene, in addition to a severely wounded survivor. No civilian casualties were reported. Today's fighting in Kulsari can be classified as a full-scale combat operation, according to the retired National Security Committee's officer Arat Narmambetov. National Security Committee and the Sirbar intelligence do not perform their duties as they should be, and this can result in a full-scale tragedy to all of us in the country. This leads to a dissolution of the state eventually. Why do we need all the alliances, like Organization of Collective Security Treaty, if the intelligence services of the member countries cannot tackle this problem together? The special operation in Kulsari ended in a classic Kazakh scenario, says the expert. An attack, the suspects are killed, no hostages are taken, the demands of the suspects are unknown, and finally there is nothing in the Prosecutor General's office statement of what sort of extremist group this was. Whether by chance or not, today there was an information of the possible explosive device in Atyrau, but finally it wasn't found. And at the same time, when there was the fighting in Atyrau, the Kazakh and Armenian military were conducting an exercise on Bagramyan range in Armenia on how to disarm the terrorists. This military exercise is conducted within the framework of the CSTO Quick Reaction Force Partnership 2012. The funeral of Nurbek Sakaov, who died as a result of an explosion on September 5th, was held in Atyrau on Wednesday. The remains of the 20-year-old were given to the relatives on Monday. The investigation claims that Nurbek was a follower of radical Islam.
One of his relatives told journalists of Azatik Radio that Nurbek did not hide his membership in special religious movements. According to his family, he lived alone, which may have led to his religious beliefs. To recall, a week ago, the explosion took place in one of the houses in Atyrau. Nurbek Sakaov lost both his arms and died at the scene. Soon after the incident, the law enforcement agencies arrested the leaseholder of the house. On September 9th, in addition, 4 men were arrested with charges of terrorism, and on Wednesday, the General Prosecutor's Office confirmed that eliminated in Atyrau alleged terrorists were related to the explosion, which took place on September 5th. Meanwhile, during her interview to Azatik Radio, mother of late Nurlibek told that everything began with her son's enrollment to music school. It is the same school where Sergei Lee studied, a young man who blew himself up in Atyrau last year. In 2007, after 9 years of secondary school number 2, he enrolled to the classes of Dombra Prima at Dina Nurpisova Music Academy, but quit during the first year of studies. Back when he was at the academy, I felt that he chose the wrong path, but I had no idea that this would lead to an explosion.
The Defense Ministry has presented a report of the commission that has investigated the reasons behind the August crash of the military helicopter Mi-17 near Astana. According to the Vice Minister of Defense, the crew did everything possible to avoid a collision and was awarded posthumously. More details in the next report.
Take it away. Take it away. I did. Those were the last seconds of Mi-17 crew, which crashed in the morning of August 22nd near the military airport of Astana. At a Wednesday press conference, the Department of Defense released the detailed information about the terrible accident and its causes, along with the decrypted conversations of pilots. Per the report of the Interdepartmental Commission, neither the pilot crew nor the ground personnel was responsible for the accident. There were no technical problems either. The helicopter was performing the scheduled flight for securing the area of the airport. This explains why there was a representative of the Presidential Security Service on board. In fact, the military doesn't believe this was an assassination attempt of the national leader. The copter spent a little more than 9 minutes in the regular mode. According to the chairman of the commission, this was nothing but a fatal set of circumstances. The accident occurred due to the fact that the helicopter went out of control. Following the rough landing with the excessive vertical speed, the helicopter was damaged and burned down. The former Vice Minister of Defense, Amirbek Tagusov, doesn't agree with Commission's opinion. He still blames it on a human error, saying that the pilot simply made a mistake in their line of duty. Dipping down sharply was their mistake, but let's not assume that they didn't do their job right. They meant to check the vehicle and its license plate to make sure this wasn't a terrorist, so they hurried to prevent his actions. They descended to 40 meters and failed to align the copter and then crashed. At a press conference, the military brought their condolences to the families of victims. As noted, the Mi-17 pilots did everything possible to save the helicopter and to prevent the tragedy. Per presidential decree, the helicopter crew and the Special Forces officer who died were awarded with the order. The act of valor and courage demonstrated on duty earned the deceased crew a second-degree Aydın order posthumously. In addition to the orders, the relatives of the crew will be financially compensated at the rate of 5-year salary of their latest positions. The total amount of compensation will reach to about $54,000.
The election of the new Vice Speaker was held on Wednesday in the Kazakhstan Parliament. Veteran MP of the lower chamber, Kabibullah Jakupov, received the post. During a plenary session, he was elected unanimously. Jakupov, in the past, worked as the governor of West Kazakhstan region, has 3 medals and the rank of an honored construction worker. Details follow.
The Vice Speaker's post fell vacant once Bakhtakazhai Mukhambetov left it. Incidentally, this position was rumored to be slated for Dariga Nazarbayeva, the president's daughter. However, expectations of various political scientists did not come true. Mukhambetov was sent away with flowers and a letter of appreciation and appointed governor of Atyrau region, where he replaced the former governor Birgay Rizkaliyev, who, according to some sources, is suspected in massive corruption. This information has not been confirmed officially, though. Rizkaliyev's whereabouts are still unknown, as well as his brothers, the parliamentarian Amanjan Rizkaliyev, who could not be reached even by his party boss Azat Piruashov. If Rizkaliyev keeps silent, he might even face exclusion from the party, as Piruashov confirmed. We do need every single member of parliament here. We asked the delegation from Atyrau to convey our invitation for a meeting to Mr. Rizkaliyev in order to clarify the situation and to find out why he is not reporting to work. Do you know the reason? So far, I do not know.
The questioning of the main suspect in the case of inciting social hatred, Vladimir Kozlov, was finally completed in Aktau. The questioning lasted for almost 5 days. On Wednesday, the leader of the party explained how exiled banker Mukhtar Ablazov is related to the party and further answered to the questions of the state prosecutor. Mr. Kozlov, answering to the question of what was the main purpose of Alga party members and representatives of Halyk Maydani in Zhanaozen, criticized the MPs for not visiting the regions from where they were elected.
According to Vladimir Kozlov, often Kazakhstan does not fulfill its obligations when it comes to human rights. This issue is evident in the case of oil workers who were on strike demanding higher wages for 7 months. Since the authorities have ignored the workers, we decided to support them and then to raise the issue at the international level, even at the level of the International Labour Organization. Thus, the Alga party members were planning to remind the state that it has to fulfill its obligations. On Wednesday, leader of the party spoke about his relations with the politician and businessman Mukhtar Ablazov, the public activist Muratbek Kitibayev, as well as other members of the party. The last person in this list was Janbolat Mamai. By taking out of context the words and phrases from a conversation with Vladimir Kozlov, the investigation sought to prove their involvement in organized crime groups. On Wednesday, Vladimir Kozlov once again examined the conclusions of experts. On September 13th, the court will hear the second defendant, the social activist Serik Separkali.
Yesterday and the day before yesterday, Kozlov voiced a series of appeals to the state bodies, etc., numerous appeals, to explain that the purpose was to resolve the conflict and not to overthrow the constitutional order.
On Tuesday, late in the evening, the journalist with Golos Respubliki newspaper Alla Zlobina went for an interrogation to the investigator of Mangistau Regional DIA, Izbasinov. The reason for an invite was a report on missing Zhanaozen residents after the December 16 events of last year. In the article published in the newspaper, Zlobina refers to her own sources and wrote about the found secret burials at the Orthodox cemetery near Aktau.
Investigator Izbasinov interrogated the correspondent in presence of the attorney Venera Sarsenbina for almost 2 hours. When asked what was the purpose of the interrogation, the investigator did not provide a clear answer. The attorney assumes that Alla Zlobina was summoned as a witness in the case where, according to the investigation, there are 2 reasons: the disappearance of the people and the need to confirm the facts of published materials. Izbasinov demanded from the author to reveal her sources, but the journalist refused, citing the law on mass media. Zlobina said that first of all, she needs guarantees that none of her sources will be punished, and that she needs to prepare to give the answers. According to the attorney Venera Sarsenbina, if the journalist wants a full investigation of the facts that she writes of in her articles, she will have to disclose her sources of information if the investigation provides certain guarantees. The next meeting with the investigator is scheduled on Saturday. The investigator discussed the publication of this article. He also said that the criminal case has been initiated and that the facts described in the article will be investigated. I will be glad to assist him. For the sake of objectivity, the sources of information have to be disclosed, but the security of sources must be ensured. We need to know if they are going to testify in court.
On Wednesday, September 12, politician and public activist Altynbek Sarsimbayev would have turned 50. Friends and relatives came to honor the memory of a prominent Kazakh figure at Kensai Cemetery. The visitors laid flowers at the memorial plaque and prayed.
This grave at the Kensai Cemetery is very special for many people. The commemoration of the politician and the patriot Altynbek Sarsimbayev was held here on Wednesday. Sarsimbayev would have turned 50 on September 12, but his life was violently taken, which became a real tragedy for opposition of Kazakhstan.
6
years upon the assassination of a prominent opposition politician, the public and his close ones are still skeptical about the official version of the crime. In fact, they are convinced that the real perpetrator has not been punished yet. This is the very neighborhoods of Almaty region where 3 bodies with bullet wounds were found on February 13, 2006 around noon. Later the bodies were identified as the politician Altynbek Sarsimbayev, his driver Vasily Zhuravlev and bodyguard Baurjan Baybasyn. The crime scene was immediately cordoned off by the police. Nobody was allowed beyond the barrier tape, even the colleagues and reporters. The authorities refused to make comments, citing the secrecy of the investigation. What has preceded the murder and why did it happen? Was it an abduction or the negotiations which perhaps went out of control? All these questions were raised by the public once it recovered from the state of shock. While Altynbek Sarsimbayev was still alive, he claimed to be under surveillance. His colleagues unsuccessfully insisted on releasing the testimonies of secret observers and perpetrators, the special forces officers who were detained later. The investigation announced that the reputable politician was murdered because of the personal animosity. Head of the administration of Kazakhstan's Senate, Yerzhan Utimbayev, confessed that he was allegedly offended by the politician. Therefore, he took out a bank loan and hired an assassin. Along with other people involved in the case, the former official was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
I believe there is no one in Kazakhstan who believes in the official lead, where the colleagues, friends and relatives of Altenbek have repeatedly stated that we've appealed to all government agencies of Kazakhstan because finding the actual killer is a matter of honor to us. Later, through the banned book called Godfather-in-Law, written by Rahat Aliyev, the disfavored former son-in-law of the President Nazarbayev, he blamed the top echelons of power for murder of Sarsimbayev caused by his opposition activities. Yet the politician's family still hasn't received any evidence. He promised to personally give the evidence to me a year and a half ago, but I haven't received anything so far. Perhaps he keeps the evidence as a leverage on the authorities, and that's why he holds on to it. The society of Kazakhstan and the observers are still very confident that the murders of Sarsimbayev and his associates were politically motivated. In fact, the authorities realize it. The president even had to summon the Minister of the Interior and the Prosecutor General, who assured him that investigation was already completed. The court announced the verdict and all the guilty are punished. Friends of opposition politician Altenbek Sarsimbayev organized a memorial concert on Wednesday. Around 1,000 people gathered for the event. Honored artists of Kazakhstan performed the songs Altenbek liked. There wasn't even one official present at Sarsimbayev's commemoration gathering. He was a prominent figure in the political life of Kazakhstan. Sarsimbayev used to work in the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Culture, and was the Secretary of the Security Council. According to Makbal Junusova, People's Artist of the USSR, it is not surprising. In Kazakhstan, once a politician leaves the government and joins the opposition, he ends up being totally disregarded and neglected. Everyone knows how Altake died. If he died from the disease, it would be a different story. But he was shot. The number of people who came to attend the concert shows the cultural standards of our people, and unfortunately, the standards are low. We did not shoot Altenbek, and that is why we commemorate him every year. The people like Altake and Zake are the people who will live forever in our hearts. Do not raise the retirement age and fire Marchenko were the slogans under which a demonstration in Almaty was allowed to hold at noon on September 15th behind the Sararka cinema. As organizers note, the campaign carries no dissenting nature. Activists are only attempting to get across to the public the issues that concern many citizens. Incidentally, this is the first sanctioned public action to be held this year by opposition members.
We can only guess what made our city administration give us permission. We think that the officials have finally gotten to a growing issue of raising the retirement age and gave us an opportunity to speak out. Along with the authorization to rally, Larisa Boyar received official guidance as well. It says that it is not permitted to deviate from the stated issue, pass word to various dissenters, and give in to provocation. Otherwise, the organizers will be made responsible. Social activists themselves say that the upcoming rally is more of a rehearsal. They are preparing a campaign against the idea of raising the retirement age for women, which is lobbied by Grigory Marchenko, head of the National Bank. According to them, the issue is so urgent that throughout Kazakhstan, various organizations, they expressed their wish to join the rally. However, this idea is treated differently by the residents of Almaty. If we had a good healthcare system, perhaps the retirement age could be slightly raised. But with our healthcare system, it is absolutely impossible. If they need to do it, let them do it. My retirement age is far ahead of me, and I do not know how things will work out in the future. But I want the quality of life to be better, because with our quality of life, I do not know if we will survive or not. We will have to work more. We will have to work more. I do not think that this is right.
A protest action was organized by public transportation drivers in Karaganda. Around 30 drivers and conductors gathered at the square near the central bus station at rush hour to protest the local authorities' ban on single-door buses. Officials believe they're unsafe and inconvenient for passengers. On Tuesday, the shuttle bus drivers were notified about the new requirement to replace their vehicles. The officials gave them 1 month to comply, which is due on October 1st. The management of the transport companies agreed, yet they haven't specified who was going to pay for vehicle replacement. After all, most of the transporter companies do not own the shuttle buses. Instead, they hire drivers with their own vehicles. However, it seems the exchange or the purchase of these new two-door shuttles will become the responsibility of the drivers themselves, which is impossible. Half of these people use their own property as a bond to take loans and have been paying it off for 3 months already. However, now they are thrown out into the street. How are we supposed to feed our children? For instance, I bought this vehicle for $7,000 and I won't be able to rent it out even for $3,000. What am I supposed to do to feed my kids? I won't even able to sell it simply because no one's going to buy it. In the meantime, the government officials prefer to ignore this issue. They refer to the law on carriage of passengers, saying that they've been making concessions and extending the use of the single-door shuttle buses. However, the bilateral agreement on replacing the vehicles has been signed, so it's time to act. We've reached an agreement that they will replace all their single-door shuttle buses with the double-door ones before the October 1st. There is a law, there are regulations for the carriage of passengers and baggage, which clearly states that the intra-city shuttle buses should have at least 2 doors. They need to solve problems on their own, otherwise they would certainly have to look for another service market. Residents of Pavlodar's communal homes are searching for vandals who ruin the outer look of their sidewalks and bus stops. For several weeks, roads and pavements were lined with ads for the infamous financial pyramid called MMM. The city authorities barely ended the grand renovation of the streets in the preparation of the upcoming Kazakhstan-Russian Business Forum when printed ads of Sergei Mavrody's supporters who launched a new financial scheme appeared in the most crowded places. The supporters of another financial pyramid left their ads virtually everywhere in Pavlodar. To bring the previous look of the sidewalks and bus platforms, the municipal services have no choice but to manually wash off the paint. Local authorities found the advertising of MMM as illegal, and they're planning to hold liable the people who are behind this. The painted ads of MMM led to damage of public property, erased pavements and the central streets of the city. We will send off a letter to law enforcement agencies with a request to take action. There is a cell phone number indicated in the ads which will lead to those who are responsible for this. Almaty resident and blogger Daniil Ivanov put on an experiment where he lived inside a mall with no food or money for 7 days. His goal was to check whether the internet community would help in a difficult situation. However, instead of finding a helping hand, the blogger was accused of blasphemy. Find out why in the next report.
I don't live on the street, neither in a house. I live in the mall. It is right here in Almaty Mall where a blogger from Kazakhstan, Daniil Ivanov, has been living for the past 3 days. He's got neither food nor money, only a toothbrush and an iPad. He decided to settle down in the mall with a deep purpose in mind. It is sort of an experiment on yourself and on the people from social networks. The main goal of the experiment is to see whether people from social networks are willing to help a person when there is no emergency per se, to help him in an ordinary situation. I'm not disrupting anyone's work here, and I'm not making any money on the experiment. The social project is all about me, and perhaps it will be a start for things that are common in Europe, because it is common in Europe to help each other out. There was a guy who lived in the mall for a month or so. It turned out that Kazakhstan citizens were no worse than Europeans. They brought a meal for the blogger on the very first night. The harsh guards gave the experimentalist a nice name, a hobgoblin. For 3 days that Daniil spent in the mall, he already knows his way around. If I lived somewhere in the food court, hung my socks out to dry, that would be really bad. I always try to keep within the decency bounds. If I lived somewhere in the food court, hung my socks out to dry, that would be really bad. I always try to keep within the decency bounds. While he does try to remain decent, his experiment, as it turned out, looks indecent and even silly to some internet users. This is a perversion of human values and a regress of consciousness. What's next? A suicide for the sake of publicity? He stays there at his own will. If this is his decision, then who cares? Let him do it. This is just ridiculous. Living in a mall for a week with no money, but at the same time getting help from friends. It is possible to survive like this for a year. Just drop him off in the wilderness. Now that'll be cool. If ordinary internet users limit themselves to general advice, journalist Denis Krivosheyev, host at radio show Деньги Вперед, wrote an open letter where he called the blogger's action a blasphemy. There's nothing difficult about living in the mall where everyone comes to visit you and gives you meals. You can work and it becomes a show. If you want a real show and if you are a TV man and you want to become famous, you should take a hidden camera and go live with bums, with real homeless bums that hit the bottom. Try spending 7 days among them and then tell others what it feels like to live among homeless. There is more. The high morale journalist also reprimanded the organizer of the action, the notorious Vyacheslav Nerush, the author and a host of popular internet projects, but Chesnaku. It was on Nerush episodes that motivated Danil to start the mall experiment. The journalist highly criticized Nerush and accused him of lacking any moral values. The only thing I want is that the law is followed. I do not want to see alcohol in the videos. I do not want to see cigarettes and people being humiliated. I am against using the actions that employ wrong and despicable ways of PR. I think that the whole story with Mr. Krivosheyev was totally made up. I think he was rude when describing me. I am not the kind of man he pictured me, and I am a much better person in reality. While the two different journalists are arguing, Daniil Ivanov carries on with his one-man flash mob. He is not leaving the mall until the end of the week. Just like any other blogger, he uses his camera to shoot his days in the mall and leaves short reports on his Twitter account named I'm Not Alone. On September 16th, when the experiment will come to an end, Danil will share his views on how responsive and kind-hearted are Almaty residents.
This is all we have time for now. See you tomorrow. Stay well.